First of all, for those of you who don't know Sanskrit, Ratri means night. And so this is the night of Shiva. Maha is great. There are actually 12 Shivaratris in the year. Every month has a Shivaratri because it happens in every cycle, and the world is made of cycles within cycles. But there are 4 major Shivaratris, and they represent the 4 quarters of the circle of time. But there's only one Maha Shivaratri, which represents the culminating moment of the cosmic unfoldment to its total climactic ultimate revelation and redemption. And that's one of the meanings of this day. But I would like to change the name, and instead of Maha Shivaratri, I would like to refer to it as Shivaruna. Those of you who know that the name of this mountain that we're on, we have called Arunachala, because it is also the mountain of God that is sacred to many Indians, and our patron sage Sri Ramana lived in Arunachala, that mountain. Achala is a word for mountain in Sanskrit, but it also means the immovable. Aruna, which also has a number of meanings, but its main meaning is the light of dawn. So the mountain of light. But instead of the night of Shiva, then Aruna, Shivaruna, would be the dawn of Shiva. So what I want to emphasize that for yogis is important is that we are leaving the dark night of the soul, the dark night of history that we have been in. And although the world will seem darker and darker in the coming days, if your third eye is closed, that darkest moment is just before the dawn, and those whose eye of Shiva is open will see the light first, because you'll be on the summit of the mountain and you'll be able to perceive and be filled with that light. So that's the metaphor. And it is the urgency of getting to that point where you can see the light, so you're no longer disturbed by the darkness that is the work of Sat Yoga. So in that case, we'll say this is the day of. Okay, I hope my handwriting is not too bad. So the 7 meanings of Shivaruna. First, we can say this is the day of stillness and silence, because Shiva is the stillness of consciousness at the very core of our being. And when we reach that stillness, we go beyond time. Stillness means no movement, therefore no change. And so it is the shifting from chronos time via the kairos immediacy of presence into the ion, or the eternal present that is always here, but is usually covered over by our obsession with change and with doing rather than with being. So the day of stillness, it is the day when all will become still. It is symbolizing that day when all will be in that Shiva consciousness. The second is the day that symbolizes the vinash. The word vinash means destruction in Sanskrit. So every religion is apocalyptic. Every religion says that there will be an end to time and there will be a great destruction of the world, and then a return of the kingdom of heaven that will follow the annihilation and the return of souls to God. You know, in the Christian tradition, there are two teachings about the kingdom. One is that the kingdom will come at the end, and it will come as a thief in the night, and you won't know, but it will come and bring an end to the world, but rapture and redemption to the faithful. But if you go back to the early Gospels, the Gnostic Gospels of Rav Yeshua, Jesus, the teaching was, the kingdom of heaven is here now. It's spread out before you, but you don't see it. And it's that aspect of the teaching that we're celebrating on Shivaruna. The presence of Shiva is here now. The light is here now. It's always here because it's the eternal presence. But do you see it? Is your own consciousness open and attuned to that light? That's the question. So there will be a destruction, but it's only a destruction of a world that has become evil, that has become alienated from peace and harmony and goodness, and a world that is based on the heartless destruction of other peoples and other beings who do not serve the goals of one's own ego, whether on a collective or an individual level. And Shiva consciousness is non-violent, and it's the renunciation of aggression at the subtlest levels of anger and of self-attack within the ego that is what is to be destroyed. The destructiveness must be destroyed so that goodness can re-emerge. So that's the second. The third, of course, is it's the day of the revelation of God consciousness as our true nature, and therefore the redemption of our consciousness from a hell realm of internal conflict to that of peace and bliss. And the fourth, Shiva, the original meaning of Shiva is the 0 point. If you go to an accountant in India, they don't use there any longer the 0. They use a dot and they call it a Shiv. But if you read or see mathematical equations that are written by Indians in Sanskrit, the Shiv, the point, the dot, represents 0. And it was only after the Mughals invaded India and discovered Shiva, which was represented by an oval stone like we have here in our central mandala, which is referred now to as a Shiva Lingam, but represented a candle flame, which is also that elliptical form, and it represented the 0. And so the Arabs, when they went westward, they brought to the Western culture the 0. And that revolutionized Western technology, because until then, there was very little they could develop. Roman numerals are very hard to work with. If you want to, build a skyscraper, you have to have access to higher mathematics, and the 0 is the key to being able to develop mathematics that will then be able to enable you to fly a rocket to the moon or beyond. So the zero was the key point. And the West couldn't get it because to the West, the basic doctrine is that God is one. But for India, no, God is zero, not one. And it's a huge difference in one's psycho-spiritual orientation that comes out of that shift. So that's one aspect of it. The fifth one is the Tandava, and actually there are two Tandavas that are, it's a dance. In fact, this statue is of Shiva dancing the Tandava on the head of a dwarf, which signifies the ego. And there are two Tandavas. One is the Rudra Tandava, which is a dance that creates such energy in the macrocosm that you see there's a circle of fire. That ring of fire represents the world that will soon be going up in flames. But Shiva remains completely immune and undisturbed, and then dances the Ananda Tandava, which is the blissful form of the dance that yogis want to dance, which is the dance that brings the kingdom of heaven again. So this day celebrates the culmination of that dance, the climactic steps. The sixth meaning of Shivaruna is that this is the wedding day of Shiva and Shakti, the two aspects of God, masculine and feminine. And the feminine represents Mother Nature, the phenomenal plane and the beauty of the world and the beauty of life when it's lived as a divine being. And so it is that beauty, that joy, that grace, that harmony, that unity that fills the world when the goddess in her total luminous goodness and love, in that state of the goddess reunites in the wedding chamber with the transcendent source of the world, who remains unmanifest. And that wedding leads to the withdrawal of the manifest, of the goddess, into the unmanifest. But then what is born from their union is a new manifestation of another world, a world of divine beauty. So we're at that moment of death and rebirth of the world and of the cosmic principles uniting again from having been separated through the dualistic illusion that every consciousness has suffered from in this past age. So then we have the final meaning, which is the day that I wrote there, poison swallowing. It's there's an interesting myth in India. I think to me it's the central myth, which is the gods and the demons are at war, and they decide to settle their differences with a tug of war. And so they get Ananta, who's the snake that represents eternity and infinity, and wrap the snake a few times around Mount Meru, which is the central holy mountain of the world. And then they begin to push and pull, and the mountain turns like a washing machine, and the ocean of consciousness is stirred up through this back and forth between the divine forces and the demonic. And what comes out of this ocean of consciousness at first is all the negredo, to use an alchemical term, all the poisons that the ego has been carrying, all of its aggression, all of its anti-libidinal forces, its hatred, its fury, its weakness, its cowardice, all of that. And Shiva does the very generous act of swallowing the poison, but he doesn't let it go below his throat, but his throat turns blue as a result of this. And so Shiva, one of his names is Nilakanta, which means blue throat. And you'll often see mythological images of Shiva in that way. And once the poison is swallowed, it is turned into nectar of immortality, the Amrita. And then out of the ocean of consciousness emerge the ultimate benign archetypes of the goddess and of the powers of the divine forces that enable the victory of the divine over the demonic.